Okay, you're live.
All right. Hello there behind the chair. My name is Sally Lemo. I am also known as Cleveland Hair Boss on Instagram. And I have the honor and privilege of being the global color ambassador for Lanza Healing Hair Care. I'm so excited to be here today to share with you how I personally, behind my chair with my real-time clients, take blondes like this and turn them into beautiful bronze for winter. So we're going to be working on, let's see if I can see this side. Okay. And so this is our before. And I did make sure to take a really good before video and pictures so that after this live today, you can go back and see the difference of what we did. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using Lanza liquids and also some Lanza clay. I love liquids because the integrity of the hair after is so shiny, so beautiful. And you, for every minute you allow it to process, you get that many shampoos. So, but here's what I most love about liquids. Not only do I love the color, not only do I love the tonality and all of that, but the more you mix it, now watch this, okay? Because a lot of liquid hair colors can get kind of sloppy. Let's just be honest. They're liquid. That's what they are. But the liquids by Lanza, the more you mix it, the thicker it gets. Okay. And so the reason I love this is for when I am working to be very strategic in my application, I want to make sure that my color isn't going to be running all over the place. Because let's be honest, mama's creative. Mama might or might not be a little messy. Okay. So the more help I have in staying in control of my application, the better off I am. So as you can see, the more I mix this, the thicker it gets. Okay. So we're going to be starting with this formula is 05G. G is gold. Okay. And 06P. P is pearl. That's a violet blue base. And I am going to be applying this to her root. We're going to be doing a root stretch. But first I wanted to show you the pattern, or so to speak, or the sections that I did. I broke this down, taking the front out first. So what I did was I took my comb, my pink pewter comb, never let go, and I took and I measured, or I should say, I looked where the comb lifted up off the head. This is the change of direction in the front. Everything from this point is going to naturally spill forward. This is also where you're going to find the most natural money piece. So if you're ever placing a money piece and you're like, where the hell is it? Or if you've ever placed a money piece and you're like, oh God, I got to root shadow the heck out of that thing. Paying attention to where the change of direction is in the front is going to give you maximum control on that placement also. So I want to work to keep her brighter around her face. We are looking to go significantly darker, but not brunette. I want to maintain some of the dimension. So I took a diagonal back line and I came to the mid top of the ear. The mid top of the ear also lines up with the high point. So everything from the high point forward is going to connect so that I can create a seamless transition from light to dark, working from the front to the back. So I took this and I used an elastic to over direct this forward so I can keep this out of my way. I'm now going to clip this over here so I don't touch her yet. I then took the back, so this other change of direction, which is the occipital bone. The occipital bone should line up right with the top of the ear, okay? So I took from that point, I also took another diagonal back from this point in the front to the occipital bone in the back. So I'm taking this and I'm going to take this and place it out of my way. Now, the clip I'm going to use for that is something that Lanza made that is so amazing, okay? Now, you'll notice I am using elastics, though. I want to go back on that. I like to use elastics. Now, you're not doing an updo. I just will once or twice wrap it around so that I can move these sections around and use 1 or 2 clips instead of using 8 or 9, and it's so hard to move them around. So this right here, I'm going to take and I'm going to place it right here. So when I want to place the hair out of the way and I don't want any color to get on my ends, I can gently lay it inside that comb. Okay. So now these other 2 sections, that I have, is I have right above the ear. Okay. So this diagonal back and this diagonal forward are giving me an inverted triangle. This piece right here is all going to fall right behind this ear. Okay, so this is a very serious transition spot to also be able to melt the front to the back. And then I have my back section. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work in the back, and I'm going to be doing a root retouch. I'm going to stretch it down a lot lower in the back. I'm also going to make sure I'm using a shorter bristled brush. A shorter bristled brush is going to give me a much more precise application. Now, I know we're not talking gray coverage right now, but if you ever struggle in the world of gray coverage and you're using a longer bristled brush, let me tell you something. If you switch to one of these shorties, okay, I promise you that could be the only change you need to make in regards to your application. And when I tell you, I get so many messages after classes that I teach sharing the different brush types that I use, that it changed their gray coverage game. I'm not kidding. Okay. So we definitely have these at Lanza, but if you're using, like I said, a shorter bristled brush, or I'm sorry, a longer bristled brush for gray coverage, you may want to switch to this. It's going to help you a ton. Now, here's something I will tell you about liquids. It oxidizes very visually. Visually, it oxidizes quickly. It doesn't oxidize in deposit quickly, okay? With liquids, whatever the level is what it is. I promise you, okay? But I will tell you, it will look like it's getting darker than what it actually is. So you just got to let it go, Elsa. You just walk away. All right. You just walk away and let your glaze or toner do what the heck it's supposed to do. So now you'll notice I took a blending brush. This is a color blending brush. This particular one is by Olivia Garden, and I'm pulling it down. I'm brushing it down. I want to make sure that it's going to be nice and blended. Okay. So like I said, this section here, I'm going to pull the color down the most. Not all the way to the ends, but I am going to pull this down the most. I want to make sure that I'm totally saturated. I like to apply my color on diagonals instead of horizontals. Okay. If we're applying on a horizontal, we actually could leave horizontal lines that when the light hits it, it could look like there's band marks. Okay. That goes for doing gray coverage as well. So applying on moving lines like diagonals is really going to help in that area. So now I'm going to take this triangle. I'm going to gently slide out, easy, right? Slide that out, and I'm going to apply the roots to this area, not quite as far down. The reason I'm sectioning this the way that I am is so that I have control of how far down I'm going to pull this root color. And as I work my way forward, I'm not going to pull it down quite as much. Again, I'm working to create a beautiful visual transition, okay? So now I'm getting into an area that's a little more narrow. I'm gonna grab a brush that's not as wide, okay? That's going to provide me maximum control. So here I am, I'm in this triangle, and so here, as I'm getting above the ear, I have the control to be able to apply that just to the root. Now here's again where I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to gently brush it down. See how I'm able to create that beautiful transition, okay? So I'm going to brush, 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 pull it down. I'm blending it into that back section. Again, this is 05G. G is for gold, and 06P. P is for pearl. And Lanza pearl is a violet blue. So the violet is first. Okay. And so you can see how that's visually oxidizing in the back more than it is in this section that I did just right now. Okay. So now I have these two sections. I want to marry them together. I'm now going to take my second color, which is 07G and 07N. And so I'm now, what I do with my brush? Here it is. This is going to be a longer bristle brush. These brushes are designed to pick up a ton of color, okay? They're great to highlight with. They're excellent to low light with, or to cover a lot of ground, okay? Again, the more I mix it, the thicker it gets, okay? So this is, again, Lanza Liquids 07G for gold and 07N for natural. So now I'm going to take this and I am going to overlap what I applied because I want to have a seamless melt, okay?
So we do have some questions coming in.
Great.
We have a question from Facebook wondering if you're using permanent hair color or demi.
That's wonderful. So this is actually a demi-permanent liquid hair color. It is deposit only. So you will get no lift on this. If you look at the bottles here, it has a 0 in front of the level. So the 0 means no lift. So that's another way you can guarantee when you're looking at the bottle, there'll be no confusion that this is going to give you no lift. So I'm now applying this lighter color, working my way up. What's beautiful about this color, the liquid color, is that you only need 20 minutes for it to fully process. But the other thing that's really great is if you leave it on for longer than 20 minutes, I personally have not experienced progressive depth. You know what I'm talking about. If you leave it on longer, all of a sudden it's black, right? I haven't experienced that with liquids. And so that's been a gift to me, you know? So now I've left these little ends out. These I'm gonna leave till the end and I'm gonna just kiss them with some clay, okay? So now I'm gonna brush these through, make sure we're beautifully blended.
We do have several questions coming in wondering where you get your brushes.
So those brushes that I'm using are from Lanza. And so if you go on the Lanza website, if you are, as a professional hairstylist, you can create an account. And if you go in there, you can then purchase the brushes. You also, I know if you are a healing center with Lanza, so if you use Lanza in your salon, you can get them that way also. So now that I'm working on this top section, again, it's this diagonal back, I have this line here, okay? I am going to be just not pulling my root down too much, but I am going to make it less as I work my way forward. So I want you guys to be able to see that. And so I am also just going to lay this foil right on top, just as a little bit of a barrier here. Okay, so notice how, see how it's getting lower in the back and I'm working my way higher as I work toward the front. So I don't want to, as I work my way to that money piece or that face frame or whatever you want to call it, I want to make sure that I don't pull it down too far because then that's going to cause me to lose that brightness that I'm going for. So this is where I stick that clip in and now I don't have to worry about getting any color on the ends. How many of you guys are flingers? I am such a color flinger. My goodness. So now I'm working my way up. You can see I'm working on a very deep diagonal back, leaning almost to the vertical. This is going to be super helpful in my application to make sure that I don't leave any unnecessary bleed marks or band marks, so to speak. So I'm placing here. And so now what I'm going to do as I work my way forward is I will end up kissing the ends and I'm going to work on some zigzag placement with some of the clay. So making sure I'm fully saturated here.
So we do have a question wondering what an ideal starting level would be for this Bronde.
So the level that I'm using to deepen her base is 05G, and the G stands for gold, and 06P, which is for pearl. She's pretty yellow, right? So I have to remember that that's part of my formula. So I also know that she's pretty porous as well. So I want to make sure that I almost have part of my formula to be filling that, so to speak. So that's where the G is going to come in. And then I have the P as a control factor. So this is going to be about a 5.5, right? Or pretty close to a 6. I would say that's probably about as deep as I would go. but it also depends on what your goal is. You know, it's a little bit tough of a question, only because depending on their skin tone, depending on what you're starting with, and also depending on what their natural level is and what they're growing out, right? One thing I will say is I pretty rarely, I work to stay within a level of their natural. Okay, so staying within a level of their natural color, especially when they've been this blonde for a really long time, we're transitioning. Here's what I also want to show you. We're transitioning from that summer blonde working into that winter blonde, right? So I'm taking this brush now and I'm brushing back vertically or on a diagonal, okay? This also I do with my gray coverage. It helps to undo any of those weird lines. Okay, it just makes everything look super seamless. Okay, so we have this out of the way. And so this is now where I'm going to come in on this top section. And I'm going to take a zigzag. Okay, I'm going to go boom, boom, boom. And I've now zigzagged this. Can you guys see that? So I have one triangle, two triangles, and then up here I have one triangle and two triangles. Okay? So I'm going to brush this up and out of my way, set this over here. These lower triangles, I'm going to bring that root color a little lower. Okay? And I'm going to work on a diagonal back. So this is where I'm creating really soft dimension that everything's going to blend into each other. What I love about working off of triangles is that you are guaranteed to always have a moving line. You will always have at least one diagonal. Okay, so that's what's great about working off of triangles. You're guaranteed to have at least one diagonal, which is going to create movement. Okay, a horizontal line is a horizontal line. That creates width, that creates weight, that creates, it's a stationary line. It doesn't move. You can get full coverage, full, beautiful blend, right? And then we have, I also like to take my hands and I'll blend that in too. You guys see that? Okay. We'll take this. Do you see how beautifully that blends? Okay. A vertical line is actually going to give us more of a slimming effect or a lengthening effect, right? It's also going to provide us the most dimension. We can very easily, in a right angle, have a vertical and a horizontal, but it will be connected by a diagonal, which is what's going to create that beautiful movement. Okay, so you can see now we have beautiful angles here that are going to give us that beautiful soft dimension. Okay, now this one I'm going to cover with my lighter color. This one I'm going to mix clay and that lighter color. You guys with me? All right, so this is how I'm staying organized. So now I'm going to take that lighter color on these ends back here and I'm going to blend them through. I'm going to make sure that I get full saturation. Again, I have like a 5.5, 05G, 06P in Lonza liquids, melting into 07G and 07N. I didn't use a P on the very, very ends because her very, very ends are much more porous. Okay, I didn't want them to grab too cool. So that's where I chose to use an N. And I'll be honest with you, the N's in our liquids, in Lonza liquids, I feel are a little on the cooler side, which I love. Okay, so that's why I chose to add some 07G to it so that I could make sure that it doesn't go too cool and look muddy. So I'm going to place this here because now that's done. This one's not done, so I'm going to leave it out for a minute. Now, here, I'm going to brush these roots down.
So we do have several questions coming in about how long this color is going to last and how easy it would be to transition back to a bright blonde again.
Beautiful. It's a great question. So for every minute you leave liquids on, you should get that many shampoos. My goal with this is it will stay on for the full 20 minutes minimally, right? So when you leave it on for the full 20 minutes, you will get up to 24 shampoos. So I expect this will end up staying on total about 30 minutes, okay? And I'm gonna add some clay just to kiss her ends with Demi Developer, which is only about a 7.5 volume, between 7 and 8, just because she's already pretty light and I'm not looking to, compromise her hair. All of our lighteners and our color have the keratin healing system in them, but we have to remember they're still lightener, right? So I am going to use a very low volume. But what you can expect from this, because it is a demi and it's a deposit only demi, it's going to wear out instead of grow out. Okay. There are no direct dyes in this. They're oxidative dyes. So it's not going to, I shouldn't say no direct dyes, but it's not a direct dye color. And so therefore it's not going to stain the hair like a direct dye would. That would be Lanza Vibes is what we have in the direct dye category in that regard. So now, does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So it should be easy to break through. Also, to wear out. So now you'll notice I didn't take this root down quite as far as what was underneath it. This is really important. If you're taking notes, write this statement down because I promise you it will like change your placement game and it'll cause you to think, if you're not already thinking this way, a little differently. Your lightest piece is only as bright as what it lays up against. So this here, I want to appear lighter, right? Not much lighter than a 7. However, it's going to be laying up against the depth I pulled down of that like 5.5. That 5.5 internally in this midsection is going to cause this 7 that's laying on top of it to appear brighter. Does that make sense? So your lightest piece is only as bright as what it lays up against. So I am going to go in and just reapply a little bit more of this root color because I can see areas maybe that it didn't absorb or I could have missed the application, right? Mama's human too. And I'm going to reapply again, coming from underneath and then on top, making sure I have complete and total saturation to the ends. I'm going to brush it through again. Yep.
We did have a question earlier wondering about the benefits of working on dry hair versus towel dry hair.
Oh, that's great. So there are different benefits. So we will say if you want to get the true tone, the truest tone, applying it to dry hair is going to do that. Here's my opinion on damp hair. I love applying hair color to damp hair, like love it, especially even covering gray. And again, I know we're not doing gray coverage, but gray coverage is the #1 requested service in the salon. So I always love to give tips and tricks on that I know work for me. The pH of water is a 7. Okay, that's neutral. When we shampoo the hair and we wet it and we keep it damp, the pH of the hair, which lives at about a 4.5 or 5.5, has now risen. We've made the environment, which is the hair, a little more alkaline. We've allowed the cuticle to be a little swollen. This is going to actually allow the hair to absorb color better, right? But it depends on your circumstance also, I think. If the hair's soaking wet, think of a sponge. If your sponge is soaking wet, okay, soaking wet, it's just going to push the color or the water, your spill, around. It's just going to push it, right? If it's dry, it can take a little longer to absorb the spill. And it could take a minute to completely fill that sponge, right? Meaning you may use more product on drier hair. On a damp sponge, notice I am again applying this on a diagonal back. A damp sponge absorbs the spill really well, right? So damp hair will absorb color better. But in this scenario, I want to see the hair that I'm working on. So I think you have to choose what is your goal, right? This one is pretty corrective. I'm not filling her first. I could have, but I chose not to because I know that with the color formulation that I chose, it's going to almost fill it as I go. Again, applying this on a diagonal back. I'm now going to brush this through. That's my lighter color, that 07G07N. And I pulled this back behind it almost through to the ends. I wouldn't need to. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? I hope.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. But I do apply hair color to damp hair all the time. Like doing a root shadow at the bowl. I do it all the time. Sometimes for 5 minutes. Sometimes I just want a little quickie. And again, so I'm a huge fan of not breaking laws. I work to not break the laws of a manufacturer. Okay. However, sometimes we can break some rules. Okay. Rules can be bent. So that's where, you know, deciding which rules you can bend or break is important. And can you live through the consequences of breaking that rule? Does that make sense? Okay, so now here we are in that money area. I'm gonna pull this out. So look how nice this is using these elastics. Everything is out of my way. I don't have to worry about getting super messy. So now I'm gonna take this, actually this way, because I like to look at that pretty pink. And I'm gonna work my way backward. And I'm using my smaller, narrow brush, which is gonna give me maximum control, because I'm gonna pull this down a little bit, just like this is about as far as I pulled it behind there. This is as far as I'm gonna go as I work my way forward, or backward, I'm sorry, from the front. So I'm going to over direct back as I work my way forward. And this is where I'm gonna move this and put my hair inside there. So I'm just tapping, and now the closer, now I keep wiping my hand. This is why my apron looks like this, you guys. I keep wiping my hand because I don't want to get any color on my ends. Okay? I do get questions about this apron all the time too, and you can get this on thatlanza.com as well. So you can see that I'm just gently, here's where now that I've gotten to the front, I'm just tapping. Tap. Just a little tap, tap. Okay? Because I'm not looking to create a big, harsh, strong root at her face. So I'm just going to give it a little tap. I got some color on this end, wipe it off, because it's important to make sure that our application is precise. Can you see how I'm just tapping that root? Like literally it's a tap. I'm not putting a ton of color on here because I don't want to lose control of it. And so the closer I get to her face, the more I'm just going to gently tap.
So we did have a question wondering if you would still use deep triangle sectioning on shorter hair, like a bob.
That's a great question. So I guess it would depend on how long the bob hair was. But yes, I would, especially in the midsection between the parietal ridge and the occipital bone. Okay, that's where most of the dimension, when we're looking to add dimension back into hair, that's where I allow most of it to live, because this area here supports the top and the bottom. So we have the top section, the midsection, and the nape. What happens in this mid supports the top and it supports the nape. So on a bob, you're still going to be working with that midsection, unless you're like shaving the back and it's a super angled bob and you see the back. But working through the sides, you'll still need that. So here's another thing. I really do work to make sure my guests are clean while I'm working through. So now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to just gently brush through, just to make sure I didn't create any hard lines. Okay, and so now this is where I'm going to be working with only that level 7 now, because I'm in the front. So I'm going to pull all this out of that comb, and I'm going to zigzag and I'm going to separate. She probably could brush her hair more, I'm not going to lie. Let me grab a brush. Hold on. Here we are. She was partying last night. A little too hard, I would say. There we go. All right. So can you guys see that zigzag? So I want to make sure you guys can see that. Okay. So as you can see, her entire perimeter is going to be included. Okay. This here behind it, I'm going to pull the 7 down a little lower. Okay. So here's where I'm now going to take that level 7 and I'm going to pull the root down. I'm blending it into that root, pulling it with my fingers, blending it through. Now I'm going to brush it, wipe my fingers off because I don't want to get her whole ends. I'm going to add a little more color. Here's what's wild is we're almost done, you guys. So again, I'm going to, yes.
Sorry.
You're fine.
We've actually had comments throughout the whole live wondering where you got your clip brush from.
This right here?
Yes.
This was created by Lonza. And so this was something that we definitely saw a need. A lot of our artists and our users were, you know, complaining that when you take the hair and you have a root retouch, the ends, right, they get stuck in that root retouch. So by having this comb, I actually can keep the hair safe and out of the way. So on Lonza.com. So now I'm going to place this here and I'm going to take this level 7 down just a little bit in the front. And then this is where now I'm going to kiss the ends with my clay. So here's that level 7. And I'm placing it right over top of that root color. Okay, I'm not avoiding that root color, especially around her face. I want to blend that in. Because I want it to be seamless. So I'm going to take this and I'm rubbing out any of those lines. Don't make fun of me. I don't know what that means. I said one time, like to rub it out or something like that in a class and everyone laughed real hard and I honestly don't know why. Because I'm 100. Okay. So I'll take my fingers and I'll pinch and I can gently, this is how I personally sometimes will create internal depth and a soft internal low light, not to the ends, okay? Here's something also to remember. As long as you leave the perimeter light, especially around a blonde space, they will never feel like you made them too dark. It's when you take those low lights, okay? It's when you take those low lights and you pull them all the way through to the ends. That's when a blonde thinks that you made them a brunette. And then they freaking hate your guts. You with me? So here's the other thing. Have you ever had a blonde that's like, I want low lights? You're like, first of all, no, you don't. Okay. You think you do, but you freaking don't. So we put a level 8 in there and they're like, oh, I guess I just thought I was going to see it more. Did you? So then we'll take a 7 and then they think that we made them basically a level 3. Right? And they're upset and they're crying and now we have a whole redo. What I personally do with my formulas, now in this scenario is a little different. I want to take her significantly darker. We're going for Brondes, which is a brunette blonde, right? But if I want to just add low lights, first of all, I leave my perimeter untouched, number 1. But number 2, I'm going to add my clay together now. I will have a level 7 as part of my formula. So instead of mixing an 8, I'll mix a 7 and a 9, okay? But just remember, the darker color always prevails. You got to remember that, okay? So now, as far as my clay goes, I'm going to use a soft feathered brush. So if you're working to balayage, I also love to use these for highlighting. I don't use hard-edged brushes anymore when I highlight because I feel like that is a part of creating some hard lines. So if you experience any type of banding when you highlight, consider your brush. Again, use a balayage brush, okay? Use a balayage brush. I promise you, it will be softer. And if you're not getting the lightness that you want, thin your section out. It's probably too thick, okay? Mama's dropping all the truth bombs today. All right, so now I'm gonna take my clay, So one thing I do like to do, I want to make sure that my clay, my brush isn't oversaturated, but also that it's nice and smooth. So I will actually wipe it. I want to make sure you can see on my tray to create a nice smooth product on my brush. Okay. So now I'm going to take this. I'm going to brush her out. Make sure these leave that there. So now these are the sections. I'm going to remove this now. These are the sections I'm going to be working on with my clay. So these areas that I left out. So let's slide that. So you can see that visual oxidation, right? So these areas here, right? So I'm going to hit the ends. I'm working on a diagonal back. Can you guys see that? And honestly, I'm not worried about hitting the actual liquids. Okay. And so here's what I will take my finger. And again, I'm just hitting the ends. I'm not looking to get super crazy bright. Like I said, this is just demi decolorizer, or I'm sorry, clay decolorizer with demi developer. And I'm going to just blend that up with my fingers. Wipe your hands off. This is how I customize my aprons. Now I have this section here coming off the face. I'm going to blend, blend, blend. Make sure it's saturated. But again, her hair's pretty light already, okay? I'm not balayaging on dark hair, okay? Remember that. I'm not balayaging on dark hair. I'm gonna come in this triangle that was just above her ear. I can see this peeking out. This is where I wanna make sure that this is just going to be that soft transition that's gonna fall right here. You guys, this is where it's gonna fall right here. So I wanna make sure there's just that really soft transition. That was that inverted triangle that was just above her ear. So again, wipe off, wipe off. I'm going to brush these sections out to make sure that I can apply where I need to apply. Can you guys see okay? So I'll turn her a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. So now I'm going to start to over direct so that the hair will lay off of her face. Can you guys see that? So here we go. So now place this here. And so this is a part of that zigzag, okay? So I'm going to smooth out my product. Again, this is clay. I like to mix this. I'm going to tell you something, you guys. This clay by Lanza, it blows my mind. I swear to God every time I use it. Now, please keep in mind it is still lightener. But I cannot get over how good the hair feels after I use it. You guys hear me? After. It's wild. It blows my mind every time. So I'm working this down. I love to use my fingers so I can make sure there's no line. And I'm going to allow this to just lay back, okay? So I'll place a foil over top of that, just so that when I'm done with this front section, I can let it lay off of her face and it'll be nice and comfortable, okay? So I'm just about done with this application. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we actually have a question wondering if you recommend always leaving the lightener out of the foils for this technique.
So for this particular technique, I like to leave it out of the foils. I don't want to put it inside of anything that's going to retain heat, simply because I really am only looking for 1 to 2 levels of lift. I'm not looking for aggressive lift here. She's already pretty light, right? So if I was looking for more lift, I would incubate. And so I would make sure that I had either film or I would be doing this inside of a foil. So can you guys see how I'm blending this up? Look how beautiful that blend is. That's why I love this clay. It just blends so beautiful. And so now I'm going to come off the face. I will wipe her face off. I'm not going to let her leave like that. And so as long as your brush is parallel with the section you're working on and you eliminate the bounce of that section, you can keep your decolorizer on the surface when you're balayaging. That's just one tip in balayage that is important. Your tension and your saturation are key. So if you're ever struggling with warmth or spotting in balayage, I guarantee you it's probably one or both of those things. Okay, so there we go. There's that. Let's see if that's going to stay. Perfect. And so now here's my next one. Again, I'm going to brush this out, and I'm still on that zigzag, but it's the zigzag closer to her face. So this is where, again, nice and smooth, and I'm not oversaturating my brush. Of course, I'm going to make sure I have enough, but so now, see this application? I'm on a diagonal back here, and now this is where I'm going to blend, blend, blend with my hand. Blend, blend, blend. Doesn't want to stay, does it? So I'm going to cover, cover, cover. And here we are. I'm going to fill in this ends. And so you guys, as you can see, had I not been talking and showing and this and that, the application of just this side probably would have taken me maybe 15, 20 minutes max. So for such an impactful end result like we're going to have, this is going to take you less than an hour to apply. Okay? I mean, probably closer to 45 minutes, depending on how much hair. Okay? So I'll place this here so it's out of her way. I'm going to grab my towel, clean her up because she's got somewhere to go. And so I just want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to be here on Behind the Chairs Facebook page, working with our Lanza liquids and our Lanza clay. Are there any other questions before I sign off? Let her process, and I'll be sending you guys the after shots.
I think you actually got everything. Everyone's saying you've been a great educator. So thank you for coming on so much.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. You guys, again, if you don't follow me already, I would love to hang out. Send me a DM. It's Cleveland Hair Boss on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm trying. All right. And Lanza Healing Hair Care. Thanks so much. Have the most amazing day. Mwah. Mama loves you.